Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om Sadashivasamarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karvavahai Tejasvi Navadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Namaste everyone. So we've just started the session right now, and I will share my screen and we'll begin.
Excuse me, what page number are we going to?
Smitaji, it'll be different for your book and my book because I'm using the PDF whereas you're using the home study volume. I can tell you the section if you can look at the section and go accordingly, or you can simply read off my screen. So whatever is convenient to you. But I don't know how to match the page numbers.
Okay.
Because the font size and everything is different, so different pages will have different numbers.
What's the section?
It's the introduction section, and the subsection is called the facts of insecurity. That's where we're going to begin.
The first few pages.
By the way, Prashant, it's exactly the same PDF that you had uploaded, right? I mean,
yeah, it's exactly the same PDF. But see, I'm going to share my screen, so you know, like I suggest that if it's too much trouble to go back and forth between yours and mine, you might as well just read the page I have open. So whatever is convenient to you.
Okay, yeah, I'm going to read it from the PDF that I have. So
okay, excellent. So then the PDF page is 18, and Smitaji, the book page I really can't say, but it's
okay. I'll find it in.
Okay, or you know, in the meantime, till other people are reading, you can just find. So the facts of insecurity.
Yeah.
So Abhinavji, would you like to begin?
Yeah, sure. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. That I am insecure is a fact, and that I seek securities is also a fact. That which I consider secure is not secure because it is also fine, but because it also is finite. This too is a fact. You may think that by giving away whatever securities you have, you will become secure. One man did this. He gave away his house, his business, and his bank balance and went to a Swami. But the Swami was also insecure and wanted to have a following of disciples. Previously, the man was on a husband trip, a father trip, a business money trip, and now he is on another trip, a Swami Atma trip, minus a house, wife, children, money, and so on. To think that subtraction is going to help when addition does not is nothing but a lack of understanding. And if artha is like this, karma is the same. No pleasure is going to be lasting. Take music for instance. You buy a recording of a hit song. Why is this song a hit? Because, like a hitman, it knocks off all the other songs out of the running. Last month's hit song has been a hit and is no longer a hit song. It only gathers dust on your tape deck. No one bothers about it anymore. Similarly, your attitude is always changing. What made you happy before no longer what made you happy before no longer provides the same joy. You get tired of everything. Even if God were around you all the time, you would eventually want some privacy. This constant changing is natural because you're basically displeased with yourself. Therefore, you're pleased only now and then. The only silver lining in life is one's hope. This is all that keeps you going. Perhaps hope is nature's way of enabling you to survive so that you can discover nature herself. Suppose those moments of pleasure, which are so few and far between, were denied to a given person. Suppose they were not there at all. Do you think a self conscious human being, a displeased human being, would want to live? He or she would surely commit suicide. And in spite of these moments of pleasure, if a person thinks there is no possibility of being happy, either because of a loss of some kind or an apprehension of great calamity, the person would choose not to live. This is the thinking behind all suicides. Therefore, moments of pleasure are worthwhile because they keep you going. The hope is that you will discover that you do not need a mother-in-law to be displeased. You need only yourself. If you close the doors, put aside the world, and sit in an easy chair and try to be with yourself, then you will understand whether you are pleased with yourself or not. You will find that you do not require a world of perception, a world of books, or anything to be displeased. All that you require is yourself. After just a few minutes of sitting with yourself, you want to get out and go out or take a shower, anything other than sitting with yourself.
Very nice, thank you. Who's next?
It's me.
Okay.
Okay. The world is not cause of your problems. To be displeased then requires nothing but yourself. It is not the word that displeases you. You are displeased with yourself, and whatever pleases you is going to be time bound. All which we will see as we study the 18th chapter of Bhagavad Gītā. Because any karma, any pleasure you pick up is limited by nature in terms of time, content, and degree. The one whose displeased remains in spite of occasional moments of pleasure. Therefore, we have now discerned the problem to be the conclusion about myself, and I am displeased. It is not going to be altered just because I picked a moment of displeasure. That I am insecure does not change merely because I acquire or give up certain securities. Thus, the only solution is to see myself secure and pleased with myself. But how it is possible to do this if, with all these securities and pleasures, I am displeased with myself? How am I going to see myself pleased without them? This is where the teaching called Vedanta comes in and tells you that your problems is not one of lacking something, but of not knowing that you do not lack anything. It converts all one's pursuit into pursuit of knowledge. In the version of Vedanta, there is no reason for you to be displeased with yourself because you are totally acceptable to yourself, not in terms of attitude, but in reality. It is not a belief, it's a fact, a discoverable fact. Only something that can be discovered is a fact, and the discoverable fact here is that you lack nothing. You are totally free. This is a version of you, and this heart of Vedanta, the heart of this teaching. The problem is that I lack is thereby converted into ignorance, the cause of which I do not know or the time being for the time being, until I come to know the version assumes the status of a promise.
Thank you. So, any discussions here so far? Like if you see very clearly, what Swamiji is saying is the problem is that I lack. So, if you are occupied in your day-to-day affairs, if you're working, if you're busy with things, you don't have time to really reflect upon whether you're comfortable with yourself, with being alone, because distractions are not an escape, right? Ultimately, the one person that you go with and you take with you all the time is yourself. You cannot carry your belongings, you cannot carry other friends and even your relatives, but wherever you go, you are there. So if you have a problem with yourself, then definitely there's something that needs to be done about it. So that is the whole vision of Vedanta is to let you know that you are the ultimate source of peace, joy, and security and fullness. So, are there any questions so far on what we've covered? So like I said, don't feel compulsory to just like move on to the next section. If you have something to discuss, like butt in anytime.
I think it's different in the book.
Shall I read the next
I
section,
can't find
Prashant?
any of these, subsections.
It's different in the yeah, maybe slightly it's possible.
Because,
Like
yeah, but it's not there.
so just to make things generic for everybody, like standardize, I would just suggest like reading off from the PDF.
Okay.
The differences in the books will be very mild. Maybe like some couple of sentences may have been changed in the paragraphs because as you have new versions coming out, there are new editions with some changes here and there. So it may not be always practical to follow along, because I realized that when I attended the Gita study group here in Atlanta, I used to read from my PDFs, and sometimes in very rare cases there were a couple of discrepancies, and therefore I had to follow along with the book.
Because
So,
even the subheadings are different. I think it's they have a different name for the subheadings for all of the.
so are you saying the subheadings are different, but some of the paragraphs contained within are the same?
I'm trying to locate the paragraph, but I'm not able to
The
get it.
paragraphs are there. The only thing is over here in the PDF, it is well, it has subtopics given differently. So
Yeah,
the thing that you are problem, you are the solution. That heading, subheading might not be there in the book, but the content
but
is same. The
where
words
can
are
I
here
get
in.
that? Where,
I
which
would
book?
say, why not just read off the PDF?
Okay.
Yeah, and if you read from the book, it's on page 16.
Yes, and over here we are on page 19. So, um,
That's probably because of the font size, isn't it?
yeah,
Yeah,
definitely. It's
definitely.
probably because of the font size, the layout,
Yeah, I
the
guess.
size of the page, and so on.
Yeah.
So,
Thank you.
yeah,
We
that's
can
fine.
move on.
So, yeah, Kamalji, you can go ahead.
Yeah, I'll be reading from your screen, Prashant. So
Yes.
if you'll please kindly scroll up. You are the problem, you are the solution. Vedanta defines the problem as not what you lack, but that you lack, and says that you are the solution because you are the problem. There are two types of problems. One has its solution outside the problem, and the other has its solution within the very problem itself. The solution to the problem of feeling cold, for example, is outside the problem in the sense that you have to cover yourself, go to the fireside, or go out into the sun. You may even decide to go to the Bahamas. When the solution to the problem is outside, it means that you have to do something to solve the problem. If hunger is your problem, you have to feed the hunger by eating food, which is also outside. The solution to a jigsaw puzzle, however, is within.
It's
Can you
going.
please scroll
Right.
up? Thanks. Is within the puzzle itself, because the solution is within the problem. There is no problem, in fact. The only problem is you, and the solution is also you. When you do not understand something, it is a problem for you, whereas when you do understand, there is no problem. The understanding is the solution. In the vision of Vedanta, you have no problem, in fact. Then you may ask, how can I recognize that I do not have a problem? This seems to be one more problem to add to the ones I already have. But is it? One problem is not there, the problem of self non-acceptance. Because in the vision of Vedanta, the self is acceptable. What else do you want really? The only problem any human being has is self non-acceptance. Therefore, you are the problem and you are the solution. Now your pursuit becomes one of knowing yourself, and it can be a game, fun all the way. This then is the teaching. A discriminative analysis of dharma, artha, and kama leads one to a certain fundamental human problem. Once this human problem has been discerned, you will take special
I'm
steps to
not able to
resolve it,
hear.
even though you may continue to pursue artha, kama, and dharma. The solution to this original fundamental problem is called moksha.
See any discussions on this?
So Swamiji says there is no problem. You created it
Yes.
by your non-understanding, non-apprehension, misapprehension. Is that right?
Yes, absolutely. So the problem of taking oneself to be what one isn't is the rise of all issues. So uh, if you actually probably it'll be covered in the Gītā later on in detail, but
Okay.
the fundamental problem is of self-ignorance, right? So once let's just take an example. The rope and the snake is a classic example. If you look at a rope in broad daylight, then it appears to you as a rope. There's no mistake that you can make, right? Now, if you look at the same rope at midnight, then you can't even see it because it's pitch dark, and therefore there is no problem because you cannot see it. The only time you have a problem with the rope is during twilight when it's neither very light nor is it very dark. It's somewhere in between. And so you know the generic form of the rope, right? You know that there is something of the shape of a rope, but you do not know the specificity that it is actually a rope. And therefore, because of the ignorance of the object or whatever it is that you're perceiving, your mind superimposes itself upon it. So now it appears to you as a snake. And there's a very important question that arises here. Is this snake real or is it not? So what are your thoughts? Does the snake have any reality?
In reality, no.
But at the same time, it induces fear, right?
Yes.
So
That is,
it does not have objective reality, and yet it has some sort of subjective reality.
yeah.
So in your mind, there is some reality which is concerned about the snake, whereas in the physical objective world out there, there is no snake. So there's one reality that's playing in our mind, and there's another objective reality which is out there in the world. So by mistaking the rope or rather by not knowing the nature of the rope, you impose a false nature upon it, and that false nature can play upon your mind. Similarly, by not knowing the self, you impose all these other, limited restrictions upon who you are. So, you start identifying with your body, you identify with your mind, your senses, your intellect, with your relatives, you start playing the role as if it is you. So, self, of course, this is again not completely concerned with this section, but self-ignorance is the fundamental cause of all human problems. And then it leads from one thing to the other. So, basically, you are the problem and you are also the solution, because knowing yourself is what's going to set you free ultimately. So it's all concerned with the self.
And I think it's also important to recognize that one really is an ignorant person, because sometimes we tend to delude ourselves that we are all perfectly happy because of certain circumstances at a given point in time. But when you start facing problems, then you realize that, oh no, what is happening to my life?
Yes.
And only at that point, sometimes we tend to think of Vedanta. So I think it should be more continuous. It should be more continuous recognition of the fact that we are indeed ignorant.
Yes, that is extremely important, and that is why Arjuna is praised as a student, because he, submitted himself to an acharya. He knew that I have this problem. He knew that I want a solution to it. He knew that I have to go to person so and so in order to get a solution. And he also knew that if I want to solve my problem, then I'll have to follow the teachings of what that person says. So it's a fourfold methodology, right? First is recognizing the problem. Second is wanting a solution to it. Third is to approach the right source who can help you solve the problem. And fourth is actually ingraining the wisdom and the teachings and the knowledge that's presented by that person. Same thing, if you have to go to a doctor or if you have to go to a teacher, the same fundamental applies there. So, what you said is very, very pertinent for all of us, because when things are going well your way, you'll just keep saying that what is the point of Vedanta? I'm happy in my life. I have my house and I have my car and my children are married and this and that. Things could be going well your way, and all these, superior upadhis that are surrounding you may delude you into believing that you are more or less free. But one by one, when things start getting taken away from your life, then you see that you sink into this very depressive state. So it's really, and that is when you can't be with yourself, because you realize that I've been using my environment as a crutch. I've been using my relatives as a crutch. I've been using my possessions as a crutch. So once all of these crutches are taken away, and by yourself, if you are happy, then you know that yes, I've made some progress for sure. But if you cannot stand being with yourself alone, then you know that there's still some work that needs to be done. So what you actually pointed out is very important for all of us to understand. So thank you. Who's next?
Pranam everyone. Moksha is not salvation. Moksha, as we have said, is not an equivalent to salvation, as is commonly thought. Nor is it some kind of accomplishment other than yourself. As freedom from something, however, moksha could be considered a negative accomplishment of souls. Nevertheless, there is nothing more positive than moksha. Once we say freedom, the question is freedom from what? And the answer is simply freedom from something I do not want. No one wants freedom from what he or she wants. Therefore, one wants freedom from artha or kama, securities and pleasures. We want artha, kama, a little bit of dharma plus moksha. Moksha is not freedom from artha or kama. That which artha provides, moksha cannot provide. But that which moksha provides cannot be provided by artha, kama, and dharma combined. A person who has moksha also has the freedom to pursue the other three human ends, artha, kama, and dharma, if he or she so chooses. This then is real freedom and not freedom from these pursuits. And who is it that undertakes these pursuits? The person called Purusha in Sanskrit, meaning any person young or old, man or woman, Indian or American. This Purusha, the person, is the one who is after artha and kama.
Yes.
I have a question here.
Yeah.
So it is said that a person who has moksha has the freedom to pursue the other three human ends if he or she so chooses.
Yes. Yes.
I remember you asking one of the Swaminis in one of your interviews. And so, if a person is mentally a sannyasi, what really makes him choose him or her choose to formally become a sannyasi?
Yeah.
So,
Oh, okay. So, sorry. Go ahead.
So, what makes a person who has mentally attained moksha to choose something?
So, there could be multiple reasons for a person taking sannyasa, or let's primarily reduce it to two reasons. The first is that sannyasa provides you with the right sort of environment to attain and to go after this knowledge, right? There are fewer distractions, that is for sure. Swamiji often jokes that when a person sees a sannyasi wearing these orange robes, they know that you're not going to chit chat with that person. You're not going to small talk with the person. You're not going to discuss things which are inconsequential. And usually your environment, the people you interact with, the things that you do are more or less inclined towards this knowledge-based activity. So first is that you take to the life of a sannyasa in order to pursue this sort of Vedic teaching and for Atmanyanam. And the second is that as you said, like suppose you've already accomplished what you need to be what needs to be accomplished, and you've already gained moksha while you are in a grihasti stage, then it might very well be that your prarabdha takes you towards sannyasa. Sometimes you just have a strong calling that what else do I have to do around here? I've accomplished what needs to be accomplished. My children are set, and everything is good. Things are well off. I can probably like wind up and retire now, and then just live a life of solitude, because maybe there's no driving force that is generated by a prarabdha which is missing, and your prarabdha is inclining you towards sannyasa, so it may not incline you towards activity as much. That's why there are examples of sannyasis who are still very active in teaching, such as our AVG Acharyas, Pujya Swamiji and Swami Paramathandaji. And then there are some sannyasis who have completely retreated to the mountains and they live in the caves and then they meditate, and they just are with themselves. There's no prarabdha that is really pushing them towards fulfillment of any other of the purusharthas. So it's not a very generic question. There could be like multiple reasons behind why a person takes sannyasa, either before jnanam or after jnanam. But it definitely has more to do with some to do with prarabdha, and it also has a lot to do with what you desire from your life.
I mean, I don't think it's a latter, because there's nothing that a person who has attained moksha could desire from life, right?
Yeah,
So I
so
think it's
not for a
isn't it
person
more
who's
of
attained. Right. No, what I meant is not for a person who's attained moksha, but just a regular person who may wish to take sannyasi, he may wish to pursue the path of knowledge and pursue it in a very uninterrupted fashion. So sannyasa provides the right form of environment and livelihood or lifestyle for this kind of pursuit. And like I said, the other may more or less be that your prarabdha inclines you, because even a jnani still has prarabdha, right? The prarabdha
Yes, yes.
continues as long as the body continues. So it just may be in one's prarabdha to not pursue activity, because once a person becomes a jnani, like you said, again, it's very hard for us to speak as a jnani, because only a jnani would know what's going on. But
That's
we
true.
can guesstimate at this that perhaps there in the prarabdha activity is not one of the governing things. So that's why they take a life of reclusion.
Yeah.
These are just my guesses, like educated guesses again, because I would definitely have to consult with somebody who's more learned as a sannyasi. But this would be a great question that we can probably pursue further, and maybe have a conversation with the Swamini ji if I can invite her.
Uh, I had something
Yes,
to add
Prashant.
here.
Sorry.
Uh, I thought the question was more related, like once you attain moksha, you become desireless, right? I mean, you don't desire for anything. But then after attaining moksha, what is the desire you have? So is the desire the driving force? Was that
No.
question something around this?
It's exactly as you mentioned, but I think Prashant did address the question, saying that it is primarily the prarabdha which is driving what a jnani ends up doing.
Okay. Okay. There might be one more question that arises from here, like, is desire necessary in life?
Desire, this interesting question, because as Abhinav ji might know, Swami Paramathananda ji has given a talk on, is desire good, or something along those lines. Is desire
Okay.
needed by human being? And first let me actually resolve the prarabdha part, then we'll come to the desire part. So a jnani's prarabdha or anybody's prarabdha may appear to an external person as if that person has desires. You know what I mean? So, for example, if a jnani's prarabdha takes him from Bombay to Bangalore, then to an external observer, it may appear as if the jnani has a desire to go to Bangalore. But it may not necessarily be so. It's just the prarabdha which is guiding his body, which is governing his actions, which is like taking him from one place to the other. Or, so the jnani's prarabdha is interlinked with the prarabdha of the rest of the world, right? So, for example, if Pujya Swamiji is giving a talk, and we happen to, listen to his lectures, and we get inspired and we learn something new from it, then his prarabdha and our prarabdha are connected, because it's in our prarabdha to gain some knowledge from him, and it's in his prarabdha to deliver these talks and to give us the knowledge that we need. So this is what we call collective prarabdha karma. Everybody's prarabdha karma is interlinked. A classic example is like the Nagasaki and the Hiroshima bomb blast, the atom bombs which were dropped there. Millions of people died. I don't know the exact number, but a lot of people died at the same time, and everybody mourned the loss of these individuals, and it was like a collective prarabdha that everybody had to be there at the same time to suffer the same consequences. So a jnani's actions appear as though he is acting upon them, that he has desires, that he's fulfilling some of his wishes, whereas it may simply be his prarabdha that is, making him do the things that he does, and it is our prarabdha that we happen to chance upon him or her or whoever the jnani is. So it is the jnani will not have desires, but the prarabdha may appear to an external observer as desires that are being fulfilled. So that is one thing. With the second question, are desires necessary or are they good? So the talk that Swami Paramathananda gives is, are desires evil? And he says no, desires are a privilege. The human being has three shaktis, like primarily. You have Ichha Shakti, Jnana Shakti and Kriya Shakti. So Ichha Shakti here is the power to desire. You cannot do anything without having a desire, right? You cannot even pick up a glass of water unless you want to drink it and you want to quench your thirst. So desire can also allow you to go out and do good things in life. For instance, if we are attending this course and we are studying from Pujya Swamiji's book, it is because we have a desire to study, right? If you look at the most exalted of desires, what are they? Mumukshutvam and jignasutvam. So if you are a mumukshu, that is a desire. You desire moksha. Mumukshutvam is a desire for moksha, right? A strong yearning desire that yes, I want to gain freedom here and now. Same way, Jignasutvam is also desire for knowledge. So desires can take you from one place to the other, and it can elevate you in your human pursuits. But now desires can also be a problem if they are binding. And that is why in our tradition, at least Swami Paramatmanandaji distinguishes between desires and binding desires. It is okay to have a desire as long as it does not have a hold over you. If the desire has a control over you, if the desire becomes binding in nature, then you have a problem. That means that you can have a desire, but its fulfillment or non-fulfillment should not impinge upon your happiness or upon your fullness. Whereas if the desire becomes binding, then if it is fulfilled, then you're happy. If it is not fulfilled, then you become sad. So these extremes come into the picture once you have a binding desire. And that's why, turn your desires into preferences. So turn your binding desires into preferences. It is okay to have preferences. It is okay to prefer the mountains to the ocean. It is okay to prefer a sunny day to a rainy day. It's okay. You can have a preference, but the preference should not bind you. It should not restrict you. It should not confine your happiness. So Swamiji gives an example of tea and coffee, right? If you go to somebody's place and you ask for tea, or they ask you that, what do you want? Do you want tea or coffee? And you choose to have tea. That is a choice. That's a preference you have, right? You cannot say, oh, I'm indifferent. I'm a jnani and therefore I don't care. You can give me anything you want. Nobody does that. Nobody says that. Your prarabdha and your preferences will still be there. But at the same time, if the person says, oh, sorry, I just checked, I don't have tea, is coffee fine? Then you say, yeah, coffee is also fine. Whatever you have is fine. Preference was tea, but if you don't have it, that's also okay. That is what you call a non-binding desire. So desires are essential for us to lead a fulfilled life, to pursue very dharmic activities. To pursue dharma is a desire. To help other people is a desire. To aid your family in need, aid others in need. All of these are desires. To have compassion and to put that into action is also desire. To want to pursue knowledge is also desire. So desires are good, but like I said, they should not become binding. And this is what Swamiji's message is, more or less.
And I think it's also important to note that we should be intellectually extremely alert to distinguish between binding and non-binding desires.
Absolutely.
For example, I think I remember some example like you first decide to have a drink, and then next time you're more attracted to have the drink again, and so finally the drink gets a better of you, and you get addicted to it.
Yes.
I just wanted to clarify. So from a Jnani's perspective, he does not have any binding desires. Is that what we're saying? As opposed to having no desires at all.
So the Jnani's prarabdha again may appear to us as desires. You see what I'm saying? So for example, like if Pujya Swamiji writes a book or he gives a talk, it may seem that, okay, I have a desire, therefore we are having this conversation. You have a desire, therefore you participated. But at the same time, does a Jnani have a desire? It is mainly his prarabdha which is appearing to us as desire, and to some level they are indistinguishable, right? Because is it your generated desire? Have you generated a desire to do something, or is it your prarabdha that impels you to do something? Even for a non-jnani, for example, is it your prarabdha that brought you here, or is it your agami karma which has brought you here? It's hard to say. It's a mixture of both. So this is called a mishran, a mixture which you cannot really separate. It is impossible for any human being to absolutely label something as prarabdha and label something as agami. Unless like you get struck by lightning, in which case it is definitely prarabdha. But for most of your day-to-day activities, the people you encounter, the things you do, there's always a combination of your free-willed actions as well as your so-called destiny that is coming into the picture. So for a Jnani's perspective, it's all kind of like the destiny, the prarabdha, whereas for us it may appear as if he's willed some of these actions. So, but definitely Jnani will not have any binding desires for sure.
Excellent explanation, Prashant.
I just remembered Swamiji's teachings at the right moment. So
yeah, thank you,
That's the
Prashant.
beauty. That's the beauty, to remember it at the right time.
Thanks.
There is one more thing which I would like to add. I've been attending Swamini Brahma Pramanandaji's class, and she also very clearly mentions the fact that when one student had asked, like, have you attained moksha? So she's like, it's hard to define whether to say yes or no. So in one sense, yes, she has attained moksha, but in other sense, she can't define it, because for the other person on the opposite end, it is very difficult to understand what one goes through during a for a Gyani. What the Gyani does not have any physical attributes to show, like whether he's walking, a sannyasi walks like this, a sannyasi talks like this. It's more like the knowledge which has been gained, the way the person wants to use that knowledge is what a sannyasi can choose to do. So Swamini ji clearly mentioned that sometimes sannyasi might just opt not to share the knowledge, and sometimes sannyasi might opt to share the knowledge which he or she has attained. So yeah.
Yes, that's very true. In fact, what you're referring to is the chapter 2 of the Gita, where Arjuna is basically asking a question to Krishna that, can you describe the profile of a wise man? Like, how does a wise man look? Like, does he talk differently? Does he walk differently? Does he dress differently? Like, what is different about a jnani? And as you rightly put, in your discussion with Swamini ji, that in chapter 2 of the Gita, Krishna Bhagavan explains that there are no external signs of who a jnani is. But at the same time, again, the whole question of moksha, like I remember conversing with one acharya. I can't remember the name exactly because I've talked to many acharyas over the years. But if you ask a jnani that, are you a jnani, the person is never going to say yes, nor is the person going to say no. It's because from the jnani's perspective, is there really a jnani? Like, think about it. If we can all point at people who are jnanis or ajnanis. We can, point our fingers at people and we can make these kinds of assumptions. But the thing is, for a jnani's perspective, there is only Brahman, right? There's nothing other than Brahman. So if you ask a person, are you a jnani? It's kind of meaningless from their standpoint, but from our standpoint, it still makes sense, because we still live in this sort of a dualistic way of thinking, and we see ourselves separate from Ishvara. But the whole premise of being a jnani is that you assimilate a Jivatma Paramatma Aikyam knowledge, the knowledge that I am non-different from Ishvara, from Brahman, that has been firmly assimilated. And therefore, from the jnani's perspective, there is no longer a person who is identifying with the deha, with a limited body, with a limited mind, with the limited senses. And therefore, there is only Ishvara, there is only Brahman. So, a person, and this is a good warning, I suppose, to everybody, that if at all you encounter a guru who says that he's so-called, quote, enlightened, or if he's a jnani, or if he's gained moksha, then the best thing you can do is, do namaskarams and leave. Because a true acharya would never really talk about these things. They would always discuss the knowledge as opposed to whether they've gained it or not. So that is something that I was taught over the years, that I've actually encountered a couple of people who told me that they are jnanis, and they didn't know the ABC of Vedanta, to be honest. So if you blow your own trumpet, then there's definitely something missing. So anyway, just a little tidbit on the side. Who's next on the list?
Yeah, I'm next.
Okay.
All actions have a purpose. A human being never undertakes a deliberate activity without it having a purpose. Even involuntary actions have a purpose. But here, we're talking only about those actions that are voluntary. Voluntary, deliberate actions always presupposes a desirer, whose desire is never for the action as such, but for the result, the object of desire. There is always some end in view. An object that you have cannot become an object of desire if you know you have it. However, you may have something and not recognize that you have it, and therefore, it may become the object of your desire. Thus, the clause, if you know you have it, is important to you. For instance, you cannot desire a head over your shoulders, since you already have one. Even if you have such a desire, no one can fulfill it, not even the Lord. If you were to ask him why, in spite of all of your devotion and prayers, he has not fulfilled your desire, he could only say, I cannot give you what you already have. When I tell you that I cannot give you something, there are only two possible reasons for my response. One is that I am incapable of giving it to you, due to my lack of knowledge, power, or resources. The other possibility is that I can give it to you, but you do not deserve it. You are not qualified to receive it. Therefore, either you are not qualified to receive it, or I am not qualified to give it to you. Here, however, the incapacity to give you a head over your shoulders is because you're asking for something you already have. how then can even God give you one? If you want one more head, being God, he can give you a second head. Although I do not know how a second head is going to help you, if the one you already have has not helped you. But he can give it to you. You will have to tell him, of course, where you would like it to be put. But do not ask him to give you a head over your shoulders. What you have, he cannot give you. Although you cannot desire an object that you know you have, you can always desire an object that you do not have. There are many things that you do not have, like a green card, a new house, another job, a promotion, a wife, a husband, or children, a trip to a particular place. Anything you do not have, you can desire. Thus, what you do not have can become an object of your desire. Without a purpose, there is no effort, no deliberate activity. Therefore, the Purush, the person, undertakes activities for accomplishing different ends, mainly artha and kama, but also dharma. If this is so, there is a very important question to be asked. Do I want artha and kama for the sake of artha and kama themselves? The answer to this question is what distinguishes the entire Vedic vision of human life from one's usual way of looking at it.
Very nice. Any discussions here?
I think it just reminds me of something I heard Swami Paramathanandaji explain, that until we discover moksha as being the only real goal in our lives, any other goal that we might be pursuing is not going to permanently satisfy. So we're just going to keep on jumping from one goal to another, whether it is, learning a new instrument or going to a new place to visit or anything. So this discovery of moksha as our real goal is very important. So yeah.
Yes, that is very true. Swamiji often talks about this, that all the other goals should lead you towards moksha. And I attended a class by Swamini Swatma Vidyanandaji when she was in Atlanta, and she just basically gave a talk on the importance of accomplishing moksha and to pursue this purushartha. And she gives the example of a person going to an airport. So suppose you have it's like maybe you have to catch a flight at 7 p.m. and you leave a little bit early and you feel that I have some work to do along the way, right? And then so you complete some things, and then your friend calls you and then they say that, do you have some time? You say, yeah, I still have a couple of hours, let's meet up for coffee. So then you go out and grab a cup of coffee, and then you still have some more time, and so then maybe you watch a sitcom for like 30 minutes, and then you spend some more time, and then you ultimately miss the flight because you realize that my destination was to go to the airport, but all of these other things got in the way. And some of these destinations may not even be in the same line as from your place to the airport, right? It may be out of the way, and therefore, if you have only certain control over the things that you desire and over the things that you can accomplish, rather. And therefore, it's fine to have desires, but try to convert your desires in a direction which lead you towards moksha. So change the flavor, change the nature, change the quality of your desires, so that it does not take you away from the road, but it kind of like leads you there. And it's okay to have stopovers, right? If you have a long journey, definitely we like to have some stopovers, we like to get some rest, we like to do some things that we like along the way. So that is fine. Like, one should not completely throttle themselves. But at the same time, one has to know that, am I headed towards the right direction? The airport is here. Am I more or less going in the same direction so that ultimately I won't miss my flight? So that is something that's very important. And coming to the subject of desires, there are some schools of thought which completely ask you to extinguish your desires, which say that desires are bad, right? And this is a very psychologically harmful way of living life, because if you sit on top of your desires, it's going to erupt at some point in a very unhealthy way. Perhaps it's going to come out as a psychological weakness, and it's going to hurt you. So if you have a desire, at times it is okay to fulfill it, but at the same time you should know that whether the desire is dharmic or it is adharmic, it is okay to fulfill dharmic desires. And that is why the whole karma kanda of the Vedas help you accomplish these kinds of desires. So if you look at the example of Ramayana, and King Dashrath wanted to have children, right? And that was a desire, and therefore he performed the Putra Kameshti Yagna. And the Putra Kameshti Yagna was an action that allowed him to fulfill his desire. And therefore it is dharma to want to be married, to want to have children. All of these things are dharmic, nothing wrong in that. But now if you desire to hurt somebody, if you desire to, take away somebody else's freedom, then that is a problem. So if you want a television, it is okay to have a desire for that. But if it's not okay to steal your neighbor's television to accomplish your desire. So that is one thing. Now, with regards to the quality itself, when you were a child, and I often give this example, that a child seeks a balloon, right? The balloon makes the child infinitely happy. You get a new red or blue color balloon, and that's it. You gain everything you want in the world. And slowly the child grows up and he matures, and then, well, perhaps you can say mature, but not really. But now he's a teenager and he wants a fancy new car and he wants a girlfriend and he wants to impress his friends and so on. So okay, I won't say the desire has matured, but it has changed its flavor. So now if you present the balloon to the teenager, he's not going to care for it, right? The balloon means nothing to the teenager. Now it's a car. And then the person grows up a little bit, he starts working, and then maybe he may desire some money, he may desire to get married, he may desire to have children. And slowly his desires get satisfied along with the course of life. And then he'll reach a point where he'll feel that, okay, I've gained more or less what I was looking for. I have what I need. I have my securities. I have some comforts. Now what more do I pursue? And then he might be inclined towards dharma, right? So first he's fulfilled his artha and kama, and now he may be inclined towards dharma, that okay, now I wish to help others. I'm in a good position where I can maybe do something beneficial to other people. And so slowly he continues helping others. He gets involved in charities. He starts doing seva for other people, for his acharya, and so on. And then he still feels limited. There is still something that's constricting him, that's sitting on top of his fullness. And so then this pursuit, that how do I set myself free? I have what I need. I'm doing the right things in life, but still I'm not happy with myself. I can't be with myself. And therefore this desire to be free gives him mumukshutvam, right? Which is again similar to jignasutvam, where he desires knowledge, and here specifically knowledge of the self, and then he goes towards the pursuit of moksha. So if you take away the balloon from the child, what's going to happen? The child is going to grow up and going to feel very neglected, right? That my parents neglected me when I was a child. They did not give me what I needed. So he'll grow up to be emotionally scarred. And so sometimes it is healthy to fulfill certain desires which don't get in the way. At the same time, there are like some pit stops that you make along the way, which more or less lead you in the same direction, and slowly you mature out of those desires. Desires are not to be killed. Desires are something that you grow out of naturally. And that's why if you look at the prayer, Mahamrityunjay mantra, Om Amritam Yajamhe Sugandhim Pushti Vardhanam Urva Rukmi Vabandhanan Mrityor Mukshi Amamrita Ate. So the Urva Rukmi, the cucumber plant, usually if you see the stems and the fruit, or whatever it is, the fruit falls away from the stem, right? The fruit leaves the branch or the stem. But now for the cucumber plant, it is actually the stem itself which recedes away from the fruit. So same way, here the prayer is basically asking for my desires to leave me naturally, that I'm not forced to give them up. Let them just leave me. Let they not have any hold over me any longer. And that is something that we saw earlier in one of these sections, right? Do I have a hold over objects, or do the objects actually have a hold over me? And so this is the prayer, that may the desires naturally let go of themselves, that I do not have to force myself to give up my desires or to curb my desires. So
Yeah, I guess what you said is really profound, because there are some like basic things in terms of food preferences. Like sometimes we really like one particular vegetable over the other, and we are like so obsessed with it that every time we ask our parents or whoever is making it, wherever we go, we want to have that particular food. And after a point, like there comes a time when you just grow out of it, and you don't want to see the sight of that vegetable anymore. So the very sight of the vegetable which made you please earlier might just put you off some other of your stage. So I guess that happened to me. Like earlier I used to of drinks, and after a point I had so much that I just grew out of it. And now even if somebody offers me like a crore to have a soft drink, I might not have, just because I've grown out of it and that particular thing does not please me anymore. So yeah, definitely desires are important, but if it is in line with dharma, definitely you should uh, fulfill your desire and then grow out of it.
Yes, and that is why the order, for normal people in life, by normal I mean they may not necessarily be Vedika, but for most normal people, their life cycle is Artha, Kama, Dharma, and Moksha, right? In the primary stages of their life, they pursue securities and then pleasures, and then once they're satisfied, then they go towards Dharma, and then they go towards Moksha, which is not correct. In our tradition, though we list it out that way, the way it is actually listed is Dharmartha, Kama, Moksha. So through dharma you accomplish artha, through through dharma you accomplish kama, and through dharma you accomplish moksha as well. So a person may say that I'm seeking moksha, I'm gaining self knowledge, but what if you're not doing your day-to-day responsibilities? What if like just leaving your old parents or something and letting them do their work, and you were just involved in this kind of discussion? That would also not be right? You need to first make sure that you've lived a dharmic life, you've done what needs to be done, and then you can go and pursue moksha. Moksha is a privilege. It's not something that's compulsory for everybody. Same way, your purusharthas are privileges. They are something that you should be grateful for, that I have the ability to pursue these purusharthas, any purushartha, including kama. And therefore, it is always good not to abuse this privilege. And that is why whatever you pursue, even if it is moksha, even if it is artha or kama, you must do it dharmically. And that's why dharma must precede all your activities in life. You must make sure that whatever I do, it is in keeping with dharma. So that's why it's dharmartha kama moksha. Shall we go to the next section? Who's next?
You have to read it.
So it's me. Okay. No, wait. You're next. Or sorry, Shalini ji is next, but her mic is not working today, right? Is it working?
Okay.
Can you try to talk? We can maybe. No, it's not working. No, no, I can't hear you. So maybe once your mic comes back, then you can. Yeah. Smita ji, would you like to go for now?
Yeah, sure. Can I follow the book?
Yeah, you can follow the book. I'm not sure the topic is the same, but why do I seek out securities and
Yeah,
pleasure?
I found it.
Excellent.
Hari Om. Is karma for its own sake? Is it for the sake of pleasure? Is it just for fun? If so, then with or without it, you are the same. You go for it just because you go for it. In other words, it is nothing more than a fancy. But is this really the case? Are artha and kama which you seek in life for their own sake, or are they for your sake? The Veda says, Atmanastu kamya sarvam priyam bhavati. Every object of my desire is for my sake alone. You only desire what you know. You do not desire an object that is unknown to you. For instance, you do not desire a Gagaba game. An unknown Gagaba game cannot be an object of desire. In fact, there is no such thing as Gagaba game. No amount of coaxing will cause you to get into your car and go to buy a Gagaba game. But you always have a reason for getting into your car. Some desire is always being fulfilled. Thus, an unknown object does not become an object of desire.
Smita
Only
ji, can you
known,
speak a little louder? I can't hear actually very clearly.
only known objects become objects of desires. There are, of course, some known objects for which you do not have a desire. Scorpions, disease like cancer, and so on. In fact, the more you know of such objects, the more you want to get rid of them. Also, an object that has been known and loved by you need always be desirable to you. You may have no desire for it whatsoever a few years down the road. No one, no one undertakes a course of action without an end in view. Whether the end is right can only be discovered later. You may change your view or give it up altogether for a variety of reasons. We have all done this, but what is desirable now, you will definitely seek out. Therefore, one who desires a particular end, any artha or kama, does so for his or her own sake. Suppose you say, no, Swamiji, it is not for my sake, it is for the sake of my son. It only means that your me has become a little extended, but it always reduces to me. Your me can extend to the community in which you live, to your religion, and to your nation also. It is your ego, an extended ego, and more the extensions, healthier the ego. Yet the end is always for your sake alone. Even if you offer a prayer for whose sake is the
That's actually next section.
okay, I don't know, it's part of the same thing, so
Oh, I see, I see. So here, like, yeah, but see, this is very important, right? Usually, when a person says something is for my sake, and if the my is confined to your physical being, this vehicle of your physical body, then it is not as healthy as, say, if you confine this my to your family, or even larger to your society or to your country or to your world, right? And so the further where you extend your identity, the healthier off you are, the better off you are. So if you look at it from a Vedantic perspective, what can be larger than Brahman, right? Brahman is as big as it gets. In fact, the root Brah comes from bigness, and we'll probably get more into the details of the word Brahman itself. But Brahman incorporates the entire Jagat within. All that there is only Brahman, and therefore, if I identify with this totality, then I am complete, then I am full, because I am no longer restricted or confined or limited to this mortal coil. And therefore, here an extension of the ego is really an extension of your identity. Like, how much or how little do I identify with? Do I identify with the totality, or do I identify with the limited being? And that's why you have the Vyashti, which is the individual, and Samashti, which is the whole. So more or less clear, the section.
Yes.
Okay. Prashant, can you please scroll up, because I think I can see only first two paragraphs. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Is your screen size correct? Because here, like, the entire page is open.
I think I'm actually doing it, watching it from a mobile, so probably
Okay.
that may be a constraint.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Prayer is always for one's own sake. Even if you offer a prayer, for whose sake is the prayer? For God's sake? Is God in such difficulty that you have to pray for Him also? If God requires our prayers in order to survive, then whom should I pray? If you're praying to God for God's sake, then for God's sake, please give it up. When one says for God's sake, it is only an expression. You do not do anything for God's sake. It is often said that one should serve God. It is that God has too much work to do and therefore needs our help? Of course not. Your service and your prayer is for your own sake alone. There is nothing wrong with that. If you pray for your mother, father, children, humanity, and all living beings, you do so because you can. Tennis, you always start with love, like marriage, and then fight to the bitter end. One person wins and the other loses. Scroll down, please. The one who wins throws his or her racket into the air and says, "Wonderful, I won." Whereas the one who loses never throws his or her racket into the air, although it may be thrown to the ground in a gesture of defeat. And when the winner.
But your voice is cracking, actually, going off. Can everybody else hear, or is it just me?
Still,
I can't hear. No, I
Gavin.
It's going off, right?
Sorry?
Yeah, I cannot.
Soumyaji, actually, we can't hear your voice. It's half of it is going off, and then suddenly it's coming back as going off. I think your connection might be a little poor.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, if you can log on from the PC, it might be just better, because I think you might have a 3G network or something that might be slow.
Okay, I guess then somebody else can take over my reading.
Yeah, I can do that.
Yeah.
Um, okay. And when the winner approaches the net, still ecstatic and gasping for breath to shake hands with the loser, the elation subsides a little because every human heart knows what it is to be on the other side. Thus, when others are unhappy, you cannot be happy. Desiring others and karma, then I make certain efforts, and if these efforts do not seem to be enough, I make another effort called prayer. Prayer is neither an artha nor a karma, it is dharma. Through prayer, you want to gain some invisible result which will give you artha and karma. Although spiritual seekers do not pray for artha and karma, they do pray for knowledge and maturity, which again is for one's own sake alone. This aspect of human personality is very important and is basic to the vision of Vedanta. When you know that whatever you do is for your own sake, everything becomes meaningful. You find that what you do has its place and everything falls into place. Nothing is more efficacious than anything else. No one action is more important than another. Each action becomes important in its own sphere and is meant for producing its own result. Can we say that the ears are better than the eyes, or the eyes are better than the ears? No, we require both. If I see you shouting at me but cannot hear what you are shouting, I cannot respond to you properly. Eyes have their own sphere, as do the ears. Similarly, each organ, the kidney, liver, heart, lung, has its own sphere. Each one is as important as any of the others. But in order for everything to fall into its place, the starting point must be proper. Here, the proper starting point is knowing that any action I perform is always for a given end, and that end is for my sake alone. Vedanta takes this statement one step further to cover certain important relationships. A wife is dear to her husband not for her sake, but for his sake. Similarly, the husband becomes dear to his wife for her sake, not for his sake. If I understand that everything I do for my sake alone, then even my relationships would be very objective. I will not go about saying, I did so much for you, the starting point for all kinds of trouble.
Very true.
Okay, I have something to add over here.
Yeah.
Because sometimes this is very rightly put that everything which we do is for ourselves. Sometimes we find people saying that, okay, I live for others, I don't live for myself. But if you really point out the reality, it's for yourself only. So anybody who is doing anything like anybody who is doing seva or reaching out to people, it's ultimately to satisfy yourself, because sometimes giving other people happiness satisfies you. So ultimately you're doing it for yourself. So very often people feel that if I say that, okay, this is my view, this is my thing, then people interpret and think that I am selfish. But over here, it's very important to distinguish that it's not selfishness. It's more that you do for your sake and reach out to other people.
Yes. Because even if you pursue dharma, like if you're doing seva for somebody else, like you said, it makes
Right.
you benefit something. There's some benefit for you. There's something that you gain. You
Right.
know that there is growth involved, and even if there isn't, just to see other people happy, if that makes you happy, then it is again for your sake, right? Nobody does something that they don't want to do, and if they do what they don't want to do, eventually the pressure is going to build up and they're going to explode. So
Yes, very
that's why even moksha cannot be forced upon a person. Like if you tell a person that you have to fulfill moksha, you have to gain moksha, and if it becomes kind of like a pressure building activity for that person, then they need to back off. They need to take a little break, and then they need to come back when they are in a better state of mind to accomplish these purusharthas. So even moksha is for one's own sake. I want freedom. I want to gain the ultimate freedom from all these limited insecurities. That is moksha. So that is also for your sake ultimately. So yes, it's true, and it's very important that it creates a nice environment where there's no friction in relationships as well. Because when a husband does something good for the wife, it's for his sake. He wants to do it. And the wife does something for him, it's for her sake. She wants to do it. And then there's no barter system that I did so much for you, now you have to do so much for me. That kind of equation falls apart. So, yeah. Okay, I guess I'm next. Freedom from being a wanting person. That I want Artha and Kama reveals that I am an insecure and unhappy person from two different standpoints. What do I really want? Do I want the actual Artha and Kama, the objects themselves, or do I want security and happiness? Because I want security and happiness, all Arthas and Kamas are reduced to security and happiness alone. If I am insecure, I naturally seek security, and if I am unhappy, I seek happiness. However, it is not the security itself that I want. What I really want is freedom from insecurity. In terms of security, I am wanting. In terms of fullness and happiness also, I am wanting. Therefore, I want freedom from being a wanting person, and in order to be free from being a wanting person, I have to see myself as secure. I have to see myself as one who does not lack anything, and I can see myself in this way alone when I have no sense of lack. If I am insecure and unhappy, and I see myself as secure and happy because of some kind of self-hypnotism, for instance, then I am under yet another delusion. It is better to be insecure than to be deluded into thinking that I am secure. If I know I am insecure, then at least I can be objective and thereby understand my problems. Thus, one has to be secure in order to see oneself as secure. To be able to say I am happy, one has to be happy and to understand the happiness we talk about. I can therefore see myself as secure and happy, either by becoming so or by already being so. I am using two different words here, becoming and being, for a reason. We generally see ourselves as insecure and unhappy and then try to become secure and happy. The whole process of living, the struggles in our lives are all a process of becoming. Being insecure, we seek to become secure. In the final analysis, people are all after the same thing. One may seek this and that, but over the shoulders of seemingly different ends, we see two common ends, being secure and being happy. My hope is that one day I will become secure, that one day I will become happy. Therefore, even when we are seeking Artha and Kama, we are all seeking freedom from being insecure and happy. Unhappy. This must be clearly understood. So this actually leads something into what Abhinavji stated earlier, that it's important for me to know that I'm insecure if I'm insecure. I cannot delude myself into thinking I'm secure or I'm happy. Would you like to have any discussion on this, or should we move on to the next section? I guess we can move on then.
Yeah.
Is Abhinavji there? Abhinavji?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, now I can.
Okay. Moksha as the end in life. Given that everyone wants freedom from being a wanting person, everyone wants moksha. When it is put in this way, it looks as though moksha is just another end. In fact, it is not another end, it is the end behind all ends. We refer to moksha as another end, another purushartha, only because people do not recognize it as the only end, even though they seek freedom from insecurity. Recognizing this end is the culmination of one's life, the end of samsara, insecurities and unhappiness. The culmination of one's life is not aging. It is the ability to discern oneself as one who is secure and happy. This discerning is part of growing up. Once the fact that you're secure and happy has been discerned, even though you may continue in your various artha and kama pursuits, you have taken the necessary step for moksha. However small the step has been made. Having stepped into this teaching, the necessary step has been taken. You should not be alarmed by the word moksha. You need not worry about what will happen to your family if you study and become enlightened. Believe me, your family will be happy because they will no longer have to deal with your insecurities and unhappiness. Also, by trying to gain enlightenment, the pressure you are feeling will definitely be less because you now have something better to accomplish in life. Otherwise, life is a problem. Marriage, for example, cannot be an end in itself. If it is, there will be problems and the marriage will end. Marriage is a means, not an end, whereby the husband and wife each seek freedom from insecurity. Freedom from insecurity is the common end and they help each other. Together, as companions, they make the journey. This most significant aspect of marriage is acknowledged in the 7 steps of a Hindu marriage ceremony. Only when these 7 steps have been taken has the marriage taken place. Each of the 7 steps represents one aspect of the couple's journey for which there is a destination, moksha. Discerning moksha as the end in life and seeking it make one's life meaningful. They do not prevent a person from seeking artha and kama. In fact, without them, life is just a rat race. One should always remember that the truth of the rat race is that even after the race, the winning rat continues to be a rat. The vision is now clear. Freedom is seeing myself as a secure and happy person, freedom from being insecure and unhappy. The whole struggle in life stems only from insecurity and unhappiness. One thinks that by adding some security, one will become secure. In this way, life is one of becoming, and in the process, one becomes hurt, aged, and all kinds of things happen to him or her. If the fundamental problem is not discerned, one's life is wasted. All that is achieved is that one human life has been spent. The good thing about all of this is that the Veda says you always have another chance, and another and another. While this may provide some satisfaction, it is not a solution to the fundamental problem. Now, if there is no becoming free, and I have to be free, then I must already be free. Moreover, if I am already free and seek freedom, then I am seeking something that I already am. I know that I want freedom, but I don't know that I am free. Therefore, not knowing I am already free is the problem. If there is ignorance of oneself, in order to know oneself, there should be a means of knowledge. And it is a fact that what can be known by one means of knowledge cannot be known by another means of knowledge. For example, what is known by the eyes in terms of color and form cannot be known by the ears in terms of sound. Similarly, what can be inferred can only be inferred at a given time and place. The basic means of knowledge available to me for knowing things other than myself is perception. But the self, myself, cannot be an object of perception like sound, shabda, touch, sparsha, a form or color, rupa, a taste, rasa, or gandha, smell. Only those who smell objects have the attributes of, only those objects which have the attributes of sound, form or color, smell, taste, and touch can be known as objects of my senses, whereas the self is the one who uses this means of knowledge, perception. Therefore, I cannot employ perception as a means of knowledge to know myself. One's perception can be enhanced by microscopes, telescopes, and various other instruments, thereby gathering better data and increasing one's capacity to make more accurate inferences based on perception. These better data definitely question one's previous understanding. For instance, because you see the sun rising in the eastern sky and setting in the west, you conclude from your perceptual data that the sun rises and sets, and the earth is stationary. However, seeing the sun move does not mean that it moves. The sun can appear to be moving, but if you go to the North Pole, you'll see that the sun does not move from east to west. You now have better data because of which you can revise your earlier conclusion. This new conclusion then becomes a basis for additional data and inferences. Similarly, if you put a stick in a glass of water, the stick looks bent. You may think that the water has the capacity to bend the stick, but when you pull it out, you see that it is not bent. Your conclusion or knowledge now is that it does not bend, that it only appears to be bent while in the glass of water. Perception is negated by conclusive knowledge. That the stick appears to be bent when it is not is now understood as an optical illusion. Conclusions based on better data are all valid, and all conclusions are arrived at through a means of knowledge, pramana, inference in this case. The question now becomes, can the self, myself, who uses inference and perception become the object become an object for either of these means of knowledge? It cannot. And yet, at the same time, I must know myself.
Very nice. Any discussions here?
I guess this is very closely linked with what we did in Tattvabodha, that for the person of to be able to see something, to be able to touch something, we need the Pancha Gyanendriyas, that is the Shabda, Sparsha, Rupa, Rasa, Gandha, and without which we cannot see. So having your eyes as an organ, skin as an organ is not enough. You need that perception. You need something else to be able to see. So, and sometimes the perception which we feel is right might not be right. The truth might be something else. Like the example given that if you put a stick in the glass of water, the stick looks bent. So the perception is wrong over here.
Yes. And then this is why the extra pramanas also come to the picture. So, for example, you have the 5 pratyaksha pramana, right? Sabda,
Right.
sparsha, rupa, rasa, gandha. These are the 5 direct sensory organs, jnanendriyas.
Right.
Now, when you look at the stick in the water, that is because of the refraction of light. And so this refraction of light is understood through inference, right? Or through certain scientific postulates which you make, that okay, light bends when it enters a medium of higher density. And so again, when you talk about knowledge in terms of science, it is still a pramana. And this pramana here is inference, because most of science is based on inferences that you draw. So you come up with hypotheses, you come up with testable observations, and so then you make these inferences, right? When we had the laboratory books in science, you have aim, which is the title, and then you have the apparatus, and then you have the observation, and then you have the inference or conclusion. So the inference will tell you what the data means and what you perceive, what does it really mean. And so again, if we actually classify all of these things as pramana, then all of science comes under pratyaksha pramana and inferences or presumptions, or one of these other pramanas that we have. So what pramana do I really use to know myself? And that is only shastra pramana. Again, reiterating what we talked about in Tattvabodha. And that's why shastra or shabda becomes the 6th pramana. The way Veda is the 6th pramana. The other 5 are, you have the pratyaksha pramana, which are the 5 senses. You have anumana, which is inference. You have adhapati, which is presumption. You have upamana, which is comparison. You have anupalabdhi, which is knowledge through absence of cognition. And then finally you have shabda, which is knowledge through shastra, the shastra pramana. So this is what the last question is really a cliffholder, that what do I use, like which means of knowledge do I use for knowing myself? And that's what we'll see in the next section. Does anyone want to continue maybe one more section and then we'll wrap up, or do you want to close off right now?
I think we should close off right now, because the next section, I think we're going to have a lot to discuss.
Okay, sounds good. So then, I'll just close off with a couple of closing mantras. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.